A cautious hold, exactly what we expected, except on the vote split, but we can get to that. The reason is, look, we had this services inflation spike yesterday, and we did think about maybe the impact of the Fed transferring across the pond. But look, the Bank of England wants to show that it has its own mind. And to be fair, Powell's kind of done a bit of the work for Andrew Bailey yesterday. There is also the big question of the budget on October the 30th. How much will there be fiscal tightening from the new Chancellor Rachel Reeves? How much will that slow down the economy? Perhaps the Bank of England wants to wait until November to see that factor in. But just in terms of that vote split, Swati Dhingra, we know, has been the big dove on the committee. We were looking at how Alan Taylor would vote, the new member of the Monetary Policy Committee. As expected, he's gone with the majority. So an 8-1 split, as you said. The guidance, no press conference this time, no forecasts, but they do downgrade on growth. This is a bit like the ECB, for example. But we weren't expecting major changes here, and it is that cautious note that Bailey sounded at Jackson Hole, John. He says it's important not to cut too fast or by too much. So the expectation heading into this was that you would have cuts in November and December, 4 or 5 cuts next year. It'd be interesting to see how the pricing reacts. And just finally, QT held at £100 billion a year, the same pace as before, and a unanimous decision there.
Lizzy, help us understand the differences between either side of the Atlantic. What isn't happening in the UK, what has happened in America. We just saw a 50 basis point rate cut at the Federal Reserve. We're holding rates steady at 5% at the Bank of England. Why is the story so different between America and what's taking place in the UK and across Europe?
Well, look at where inflation is in the UK, 2.2% holding there. Yes, there's that worry about services inflation. And then look at the growth picture. Question marks, as I say, around what the budget is going to do. We've got the first Labour government in over a decade. And so we have those questions on growth as well. Hence the caution from Andrew Bailey, but wanting to prove that he is his own man. Of course, Jay Powell really coming out and saying that they are going to have that soft landing. So that confidence perhaps transmitting somewhat to the UK story.
Andrew Bailey may be trying to say he's his own man. It also highlights, though, how unique the Federal Reserve is in terms of their privilege to ease at a time where there isn't necessarily obvious weakness that they can point to. The fact that they downgraded growth in the third quarter at the same time that they lowered their expectation for inflation by year end, at the same time that they're holding rates steady, really highlights that. Lizzy, how much do you think that this is going to become an increasing burden on them, especially given the political considerations and political independence?
Well, remember that growth is the number one priority of this government. So it is bad news for Keir Starmer that growth has been downgraded. As we look ahead to that budget, let me say, on October the 30th, there is this tension between the idea, and it's not confirmed, we won't know until we get there, but that it could be an austerity budget. How is that going to grow the UK economy? So in the past 4 months, we've seen out of 3 of them, no growth in the UK. This is not a good look politically, but it hasn't worried them, the BOE, yet enough to go for this cut today.